In May of 1845, the most sophisticated exploration force ever assembled by the British Empire prepared to leave the shores of England. Two ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, were marvels of Victorian engineering. They were outfitted with reinforced iron hulls to withstand the crushing pressure of the ice and experimental steam engines adapted from locomotives. They carried 3 years' worth of food, much of it preserved in thousands of newly invented tin cans. At the helm was Sir John Franklin, a seasoned veteran of the Arctic, a man whose name was synonymous with British naval prestige. As the ships disappeared over the horizon, the mood was one of supreme confidence. The British public believed that within months, Franklin would bridge the gap between the Atlantic and the Pacific, securing the Northwest Passage for the glory of the Crown. But as the months turned into years, the silence from the Arctic grew deafening. 129 men had vanished into the white void of the North, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt the world for nearly 2 centuries. What happened to the Franklin expedition was not just a tragedy of nature, but a harrowing descent into a frozen nightmare that pushed human endurance to its absolute breaking point. To understand the scale of the disaster, one must understand the environment Franklin was sailing into. The Arctic of the mid-19th century was a world largely unknown to Europeans, a shifting, treacherous labyrinth of pack ice that could move with the speed of a galloping horse or freeze solid in an instant, trapping a ship for years. Franklin's mission was to navigate the final unmapped links of the Northwest Passage. By July of 1845, the ships were seen by a whaling vessel in Baffin Bay, waiting for the ice to clear so they could enter the labyrinth of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. It would be the last time any Europeans saw the men of the expedition alive. The first hint of their fate came years later, on a tiny, barren scrap of land called Beechey Island. Search parties discovered the remains of the expedition's first winter quarters. There they found 3 graves. The headstones marked the deaths of 3 young sailors: John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Brain. They had died early, in the winter of 1846. When their bodies were exhumed by scientists in the 1980s, they were found to be perfectly preserved by the permafrost, their faces frozen in a haunting, lifelike state. Analysis revealed they were suffering from tuberculosis, and perhaps more significantly, high levels of lead poisoning. The very technology meant to save them, the lead-soldered tin cans containing their food, was likely slowly poisoning the entire crew, clouding their judgment and weakening their bodies just as the real struggle began. After leaving Beechey Island, Franklin sailed south toward King William Island. It was here that the expedition met its doom. In September 1846, the Erebus and Terror became ensnared in massive pack ice off the island's northwest coast. They expected the ice to melt the following summer, but the thaw never came. The summer of 1847 brought only more cold. The ships remained locked in a frozen grip. We know from a single, desperate scrap of paper, the Victory Point note, that Sir John Franklin died on June 11, 1847. The cause of his death remains unknown, but with his passing, the expedition lost its heart. By April 1848, the survivors had spent 19 months trapped in the ice. Supplies were dwindling, lead poisoning was rampant, and scurvy was beginning to rot the gums and reopen old wounds of the starving sailors. Captain Francis Crozier, who took command after Franklin's death, made a desperate decision. The 105 surviving men abandoned the ships. They planned to walk across the ice to the mouth of the Back River, hundreds of miles away, and trek overland to a Hudson's Bay Company outpost. It was a death march. They hauled heavy wooden boats laden with supplies, including strange, useless luxuries like silver spoons and heavy books, across an uneven, jagged landscape of ice. As the men moved south, they dropped one by one. Inuit oral histories tell of a gluka, a white leader seen walking with a band of starving men. The Inuit described the men as falling down as they walked. When the famous explorer John Ray interviewed the Inuit in 1854, he was given a shocking report. He was told that the final survivors had resorted to the last unthinkable taboo. Cut marks found on the bones of the dead, discovered decades later, confirmed the horrific truth. In their final hours, the men of the Franklin expedition had resorted to cannibalism. For over 150 years, the final resting places of the ships themselves remained a mystery. Countless expeditions searched the Arctic, finding only scattered relics. A silver watch, a leather boot, a heap of bleached bones. The mystery of the Erebus and Terror became a foundational myth of Canadian and British history. Then in 2014, a breakthrough occurred. Using side-scan sonar and following the clues left in Inuit oral tradition, which had been ignored by Victorian searchers for generations, researchers located the wreck of HMS Erebus in the shallow waters of Wilmot and Crampton Bay. 2 years later, the HMS Terror was found in even better condition, resting at the bottom of Terror Bay. The ships are eerie time capsules. The cold, dark water has preserved them so well that plates still sit on shelves and the glass in the windows remains intact. Diving into these wrecks is like stepping back into 1848. They tell a story of a crew that was prepared for everything except the sheer, unrelenting stubbornness of the Arctic ice. The Franklin expedition remains a powerful reminder of the limits of human technology and the dangers of hubris. These 129 men were the astronauts of their day, venturing into the unknown with the best tools science could provide. In the end, they were reclaimed by the wilderness they sought to conquer. Today, the names Erebus and Terror serve as a somber epitaph for the age of discovery. We now know that the Northwest Passage does exist, and with the melting of the polar ice, it is more accessible than ever. But the path was paved by the lives of men who suffered through unimaginable cold and darkness. Their story is etched into the frozen stones of King William Island and preserved in the silent, wooden hulls at the bottom of the sea. As we look back on the Franklin expedition, we see more than just a failed mission. We see a testament to the human spirit's will to survive, even when faced with the absolute end of the world. The mystery of what happened in those final months may never be fully told, but the ghosts of the Erebus and Terror will forever haunt the annals of history, a chilling reminder of the price of exploration.